see powerful voices trying to silence truth and punish dissent, and yes, weaponize justice for political gain. We are witnessing the fraying of our democracy, the erosion of our system of government. This, my friends, is a defining moment in our history. Let us stand together to defend our rights, to protect every safeguard, every institution, every immigrant. I know what it feels like to be attacked for just doing your job. But I also know what it feels like to overcome adversity. And so I stand on solid rock. And I will not bow. I will not break. I will not bend. I will not capitulate. I will not give in. I will not give up.
Welcome home, y'all. This is episode 101 of Native Land Pie, where we give you our breakdown of all things politics and culture. We are your hosts. Tiffany Cross is right over here. I just pulled an Andrew, Angela Wright, Andrew Gillum, and speaking of Andrew, we have Andrew Jr. who's joined us. His name is Bakari Sellers. What's going on, y'all? How you doing? Welcome home.
Welcome home. Welcome home.
Yes, indeed. Well, we have a packed show. I would love to know what we're getting into. But before we do that, I just want to tell y'all, I know some of you all have been waiting for the Culture Con episode. We haven't forgot. We just tighten it up, making sure it's perfect. It's going to be a little bit longer, but it is coming very, very soon. So please keep an eye out for the Culture Con live show. It is our last hurrah without Bakari. So it's a very, very good show. Now that we got Cocky Charles with us, you know, it's a little tough every now and then, but we're all good. I also want to let you all know, if you didn't catch it, we have an episode with Janae Nelson, who is a tremendous lawyer, the president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, who also argued the oral arguments at the Supreme Court of the United States on the Kylie case in Louisiana. So she joins us live on an episode that's already been shot, and we hope that you'll check that out as well. So anyway, y'all, what are we getting into today? Everybody at once.
You know, we've been cautioned so many times about crosstalk. I'm like, I ain't doing it. Who's first? If I could just give a disclaimer, and I apologize to our viewers for my congestion and whatnot, but I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I know, Angela, you probably passed it off to me.
No,
but
I'm still active.
there's a lot going on. I think one of the things, you know, we owe it to our listening fam to tune in on is this: what's happening with Letitia James, the attorney in New York, but also how this is sending signals, I think, across the country to either break, bend, or bow, or resist this administration. Powerful statements that she made here at the top of the show.
Absolutely. Tiff?
You know.
Oh, it sounds like, okay, other Tiffany. Hey, Bakari, go ahead.
No,
I
am over here treading on this thin ice because Angela gave me my daily dose of humbling as we go through this. And
is there only one dose a day?
Say thank you.
Is that the...
Yeah, 0.5 mLs, if we're being specific, not too much. I do want to, I know I'll probably get to this in my call to action, so I'm jumping the hoop a little bit, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a special shout out to D'Angelo and his family. Our condolences go out, and particularly because there's a young man who lost his mother and father in the span of a year. Angie Stone, as we know, passed away earlier this year after a horrific car crash. And D'Angelo was just, part of our culture and an innate part of our culture growing up. But one of the things I did want to highlight is I was going through it, and earlier this year, we lost Irv Gotti from 54 from diabetes. We lost DJ Mr. C. We lost Rico Wade early in his life. As we go through this, we realize that we've had many people from Magoo at age 50, DMX age 50, Biz Markie 57, Coolio just shy of 60, Heavy D who collapsed outside of his home at the age of 44. And so I think that maybe that's a mini pod or something else that me and Andrew talk about on the side. But all love goes out to Angie Stone, D'Angelo, condolences, and particularly to their son. They leave here without a mother and a father.
Thank you, Bakari, for that. You all, he's still new, so he has no idea this part is rapid. But just know it was because he was trying to be empathetic. Tiff, I want to come to you for your topics for today.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm going to get into, I feel like there's an anti-intellectual. Just hazing Bakari.
Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Welcome. But what I want to get into is this anti-intellectual movement that I think is ravaging the Black community. I think this week a lot of us saw the clip of Marc Lamont Hill on the Joe Budden podcast. And if you didn't, we'll certainly be playing it here. But beyond just this viral moment, I want us to get into the dying and the death of Black intellectualism right now. So looking forward to get into that with my co-host.
Well, thank you, Tiff. I just want to throw in to what's clearly become a Remy Ma kind of day. It's a theme. Are you dumb? Because we're going to get into those text messages from those young Republicans. And also, are you dumb? Gavin Newsom, what's up with this reparations bill, homie? What you got against us? So we're going to talk about why he thinks Proposition 209 still expands into everything Black. And maybe he thinks it's a pathway to the White House. We'll make sure it's not. So anyway, welcome home, y'all. We're going to jump into this show. Bakari, you dropped this topic in our chat. So do you want to take us into what these silly Republicans were talking about on this chat thread?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we in this country have never really dealt with the issue of race. And I think what you're seeing in these leaked chats from young Republicans is that we should not look at them as leaders of the future for the Republican Party. We should look at them as leaders of right now. And I think that the racism that is the underbelly of the Republican Party shone through in those chats. But the misogyny stuck out, the anti-Semitism, it was very poignant. And then, I mean, I don't like to necessarily do this, but if you were to look at many of the comments these guys made juxtaposed against how these guys look, they look like the comments they made, if that makes sense.
Hello.
I mean, so there was nothing attractive about them, and there was nothing attractive about the words that came out of their mouth. However, these are people that assume leadership. And when you look at leaders right now, you know, you have people who are saying, let's not talk about this at all. This isn't an issue. This is childhood indiscretion, whatever. Whereas Democrats, whenever this has happened, we're the first ones to rush through and say people should not say X, Y, Z. And I think the best example is our moral compass is one that, no, I'm not telling Jay Jones to get out of the race, but I'm like, Jay Jones, like, what the were you thinking in those text messages? You cannot espouse those things, et cetera. Let voters determine whether or not they vote for you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Jay, you got to have more discretion in that. You don't see the same balance on the Republican side when you have that racism, when you have that misogyny, et cetera.
B, let me just I was gonna back us into what happened. So
yes.
we play inside baseball in here sometimes, and what we want to do is first make sure y'all understand what happened. So it was young Republican leaders from all over the country, some of them in elected office, who had a chat thread. Many of us have chat threads, but they had a chat thread on Telegram, and all of their business was telegrammed for the world to see in a Politico article that dropped yesterday. I just want to add something. I'm sorry, not yesterday, this week, Tiff. Okay. When we record yesterday. So we had this Politico article drop, but here's what I think is important. Since then, there's been an update, and y'all's vice president, J.D. Vance, said, since Bakari brought it up, that Jay Jones' texts were far worse than these Republican texts. These young Republicans are saying that I love Hitler, calling Black people monkeys, talking about watermelon and fried chicken, using the N-word, using all kind of racial slurs, and talking about turning on gas chambers. Since then, J.D. Vance has said that the young Republicans' chat pales in comparison to Jay Jones's text.
I just want to jump in. So yes, Angela, you referenced that this was a story broken by reporting from Politico off their Telegram chats. Just so folks know, the text messages were spanning more than 7 months of correspondence. And among the people in the chat were young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. Some of the texts, they referred to Black people as monkeys, the watermelon people. They mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. And there were 2,900 pages of the chats, and they were shared among millennial and Gen Z Republicans, and this was between January and August. And it chronicles a campaign to seize control of the Republican Party to be hardliners on the Trump agenda. So when you think about what that means, Roger Stone made a comment about one of the people's, Peter Gunta, I think is his name. And he was saying, well, this is not the Peter I know. And I just find it so incredibly arrogant when people say that about things, as though your experience centers what happens with this person. And I would just further say that anyone who is surprised by these texts has not been paying attention to what has happened in the Republican Party. You guys have been referencing Jay Jones. If you can just share with our viewers who that is, what he's running for, and the depths behind it.
Yes, he's running for Attorney General in Virginia. I think we got a delay with Bakari. Sorry, B. I think you were just about to start talking.
No, I don't know if I have a delay or not. I'm sorry. I'm just bringing all types of hiccups to the show, but they'll smooth out, and that's why I'm platinum. That's why they call me platinum ratings, because shit just work out. That's what happens when you blessed. It just work out. But
I know you better speed up your Wi-Fi.
Jay Jones is running for Attorney General of the great state Commonwealth of Virginia. Jay Jones, he had sharing some comments with a Republican colleague of his who leaked those to the press. In those comments, Jay Jones talked about some of the thoughts he had in his head about using bullets and weapons and violence against his peers and colleagues. He was then told to stop, and then he called his colleague and kind of reiterated some of the same views he had about wanting to go down the path of political violence. And it is now, it's caught fire. Stephen Miller talks about it. J.D. Vance has talked about it. Everyone has talked about it because, as we know, and I hope our viewers know, one of the most important races we have coming up extremely soon is the race in Virginia for not only governor, but the entire state, lieutenant governor and attorney general as well. And Jay is somebody I know. Jay's a young Black attorney, great guy. And I think that even when we make mistakes, I think Democrats sometimes oftentimes are reluctant to say, like, what the were you doing? But this is a what the were you doing moment.
Well,
you know what I don't get is what kind of comfort Jay may have felt with his Republican colleague to exchange those kinds of messages in the first place. And by the way, I don't want to both sides this thing. I know that we're bringing this up in the context of what the California kids, young Republicans, whatever it is. Tiffany, you had a term that you didn't mean to call them, but it was interesting, and now I lose thought on it. But I liked it. It seemed insulting. But in essence, what these young people did is not excusable. It certainly treads along a pattern of thinking, probably of being, a way in which they see the world. And they make no apologies about expressing themselves that way. Certainly not over a 6-7 month span of time where there's no contradiction. There's only a doubling down in the line of thinking, in the line of the way in which they perceive, and the way in which they talk about folks of color, Black folks, and their political opponents. Jay, obviously an elected official who, in my opinion, really ought to know better, and certainly should be questioning whether or not he should have ever been in a conversation, one like this, but two, with a Republican colleague that he thought was going to have his back one day, when these folks have shown us time and time again that that's not who they are. So I'm a little baffled on that one, and I would love a more complete and exhaustive explanation about what happened. But I think on the young Republicans part of this thing, for a long time, y'all, a lot of us operated by the belief that with time and with progress, that party produces a more enlightened person. It produces a person who is more reflective of their time, if you will. And I just think that we've been shown time and time again, if it isn't for the Dylan Roofs of the world or the young white male extremists who are right now, frankly, the most dangerous thing walking around in America. And when they make us the ire of their impact, really bad stuff happens in our community. So I've disavowed myself of the belief that over time, we'll get people who are more thoughtful and who reflect a more diverse world around them. Because exactly what I think we're getting are throwback to, the 1940s, 50s, 60s. These folks are trying to go further back in the history of this country and make it our future rather than representing a more, multi-racial demographic society. They're resisting it at every single turn. And I just think we ought to disavow ourselves the notion that with age and with maturity and with the changing of ages and time, that it's going to produce a better human on the other side. It isn't producing a better human.
It's really not. And I think that is the part. Like we keep talking about, we're going back in time. I think that it is the past, present, and it is the future until they decide to turn over a new leaf. What's fascinating to me is, I have, again, some of these private chats, especially with my girls, and we also have lamented what happens if our chats are ever leaked. It's not because we calling people racist names. It's like, what is going on? No, we're talking about interpersonal conflict, breakups or how to navigate finances, but we're not talking about this. So I think what is baffling to me is that, one, it is not a bigger story. Two, that there are folks who would say, oh, they just had a lapse in judgment and even call them young people. These are grown men. These are grown men who are grown enough to hold leadership position in the Republican Party. And here's the part that's sad. I'm sure y'all can align with this. It would be one thing if what they put in text did not translate into policy. And on that, right, to the point where, again, the more progressive side of the country, the best coast, I like to call it, has decided that a state of emergency is necessary, right, in LA County, given the number of ICE raids that are taking place. That is just one area where we see these policies being so detrimental, the racist ideology, the white supremacy behind these policies being what is guiding how they interface with other Americans and other human beings. Oh, okay, that's fine. We can move on.
Oh, I thought you were tossing the sound.
Yeah.
No, is there a clip? I didn't have a clip.
I didn't send one, but the way you set up, I thought I was like, oh, there must be sound.
No, I'm sorry. I thought we were going to reparations.
I'm watching them. No, I was going into ICE raids. It is a clear indication of how they legislate. If we want to move over to reparations,
no. That's the C block. Yeah, I think you're right, 100% right, Angela. And, I think we have to start questioning how do we even know that these are ICE agents, in quotations, snatching people off the street? There's already been consistent reporting from numerous outlets, including CNN, of verified incidents of people impersonating ICE agents. How do we even know that these people are officially government sanctioned? How do we know these aren't Proud Boys just out here doing some sort of mercenary work for this administration? It's just getting to the point where it's so dangerous. And a conversation I had this weekend, I told you guys last week that I was off to Michael Harriot's for his Centers Party. I missed you guys there. You all were busy this weekend. But we talked about what is the point? Well, the question I asked is, what is the point when I say, what am I going to regret 6 months from now? When they indicted Tish James, was that the day that I should have said, you know what, I got to get the fuck out of here? When they started snatching people off the streets and we normalized it, was that the day that I should have said, time to get my passport and get the fuck out of here? And as we see this happening increasingly and they're flooding the zone with chaos, I fear that people are tuning out or normalizing chaos to where chaos seems normal and quiet seems eerie. And I just don't know what it's going to take. California is on the front lines, but we see this happening in Chicago. It's coming to Portland. Like, authoritarianism is coming soon to a city near you. And what will we do when that shows up? And I don't have a solution for that. I don't have advice for people. But it is increasingly frightening as I see what's happening across the country. And I am giving more serious consideration every day to the internal argument: do we fight or do we flee?
I mean, that's
know.
real, Tiff.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, please, Bakari. No, please.
No. And my question, it centers around helping me articulate my thoughts, whether or not I'm communicating on CNN or whether or not I am with Tremaine, my barber, who tightened me up. As y'all see, I'm looking fresh for the show. I try to clean up.
Very lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for the compliment, Tiffany. But
Lord help us.
How do we connect? Because people will say, what is the connection? And I think we take this connection for granted. But how do you connect the text messages we saw and we talked about? How do you connect that incendiary, hyper-ignorant racism and misogyny and the policy that we're seeing? Because a lot of people I talk to are just missing that connection. They don't understand how you get from or they just say that there is no connection, but how you get from these young Republicans who are manifesting themselves in the leadership and their racism dictating policy. How can we communicate that better? How can I communicate that better? Connecting A to B. Does that make sense?
I don't know that you have to do a better job, Bakari. I think you are one of our better communicators on television. But I think people have to look no further than you take these text messages from these Republicans over here and you connect it directly to Project 2025. The reason they can dismiss 250,000 Black women off the job and have no remorse, have no care, concern in the world for how those folks are going to provide for themselves, their children, their grandchildren, or whomever it is that they take responsibility for themselves. They don't have to see the humanity in those folks because they never ever considered it in the first place. If you have compared a woman, a human, to a monkey, right, swinging from trees, eating bananas. And that's not to insult the monkey, right? This is outside of that. Mm-hmm. This is, if you consider them non-human, they care not, they feel not, they have no needs, nothing that resembles what you would want for your family or what you need for your family, then it's easy to castigate them. When I listen to Stephen Miller and the way in which he talks about the opposition, you would almost think, one, you would never conclude that this was a human opposition. Like, there's no way that these folks live, breathe, draw air, oxygen, survive off of the same thing, right? And in his mind's eye, I have to believe that he makes no likeness between him and the people who he opposes. You are nothing. You will be nothing. You are, you're not worth this, that, and the third. How can you muster that kind of animus towards your fellow man or woman? Well, the only way you can muster that kind of animus towards somebody like that is, one, if you don't see them as equal to you, right? They are of no equal to you. And I got a funny comparison, but I won't make it here. But basically, is that they screw somebody you like, and you kind of got some issues with them. That's the only time I've ever seen that level of animus directed toward somebody on the opposite side, is if you have been thoroughly, royally messed over by them, or that you don't see them on your level, not needing the same things you do, not appreciating the same things you do. And I said that sort of jocularly, but in truth, that's the only time I've ever had deep, non-humane animus for a person, is in those kinds of stark contrasts. So I don't think people have to make the conclusion. I don't think they have to connect them. But for those of us who are looking on, trying to say, why should it matter to me that these guys are raising up yet another generation of racist haters? It's because their racist haters one day become J.D. Vance. And but for their pretty words and their pretty degrees, they're acceptable in society. And we never have to trace back to the fact that they don't see their fellow human as humane at all.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Tiff. Uh-huh.
Oh, no, I was going to shift because he said
I think it's a great time.
Yes. Because when you're not an intellectual, I think sometimes they see the white man doesn't believe in himself enough. So I think gets frustrated when he sees Black people looking at an unlevel playing field and saying, watch me hurdle all of this that you put at me and still be successful. And sometimes we can adopt the oppressor's behavior, which brings me to a clip that went viral this week. And that is, of course, of our friend and brother, Marc Lamont Hill. This happened on the Joe Budden broadcast this week. First of all, I thought Marc Lamont Hill handled himself so incredibly well, sitting across from a full-blown temper tantrum from a grown man. And I think it's important for our viewers, if you don't know about Marc Lamont Hill, he is a luminary. He is an incredible intellectual who hosts an amazing show on Al Jazeera called Upfront. He hosted on Al Jazeera English. One of his interviews went viral during post-October 7th, where he got the former Israeli deputy minister, Danny Ayalon, to admit, to concede that the response to Palestinians in Gaza was, in fact, collective punishment. He owns a bookstore. He's an amazing writer. He's a professor. He was unfortunately dismissed from CNN because he said from the river to the sea while speaking at the UN. If you're like me, you might genuinely wonder, why is that considered anti-Semitic? Some people of the community consider it so because Hamas used this phrase in 2017, and some members of the Jewish community thinks the phrase suggests that it's a Palestinian militant group and only used in that perspective that suggests that Israel does not have the right to exist. Marc Lamont Hill has been incredibly clear that he does not believe that. It was a call for justice, and he made the reference when he was addressing the UN, and he was just supporting Palestinian freedom, which of course I certainly do as well. But this is why I thought I wanted to get my co-host perspectives on this. There seems to be the death of Black intellectualism, particularly when it comes to who has a microphone. And viral clips like this take up so much space. To me, it was clear that his co-host felt small. And, you know, even him saying you use tricky words and Marc responding with, I use words that are tricky to you. And anytime somebody, I think, cannot take to be questioned or responds with a full temper tantrum, it is always about that other person, not about, like, it wasn't Marc, he didn't do anything. And if someone is so small that you can't articulate your point without throwing a temper tantrum or insulting another person, I'm happy that Marc showed both sides, that yes, I'm an intellectual, but don't get up in the studio, you know? And I think it's important for people to see that, yes, you can still be an intellectual and demand your respect. That doesn't make you soft. I'm concerned, though, in our community, because when you look at just the plain data, you can take my perspectives out of it. There seems to be an erosion. I don't consider myself a member of the Black intellectual class, but I do thrive in that space. I love to be around. Sometimes, Andrew, when you're talking, I forget I'm a host on the podcast. Like, I'm just listening to you because you're saying something so brilliant to me or something that I didn't know. I had no perspective. And I enjoy hearing that. I have curiosity. I'm not trying to be fake humble. Like, I don't consider myself an intellectual. I consider myself intellectually curious. I have questions. I see that getting dulled across peers and across the community. Social media, I think, is a big part of that. A study out of UC San Diego found that even low levels of social media use are associated with poorer cognitive outcomes, particularly among children. AI, people keep promoting AI, like, oh, look at this fancy new toy, and not immediately countering it with the dangers of our community. The level of cognitive impairment of even just moderate use of AI, like ChatGPT, is comparable to being concussed. Our literacy rates across Black children, only 17% of Black fourth graders scored at or above proficiency. A significant percentage of eighth graders could not read a paragraph and summarize it and say what it is. We're in a space where telling people it's a time for reading books is considered elitist. And it's just frustrating to me. And I have to say, I'm sure we'll disagree here, and or maybe we won't disagree, but I hope there are different perspectives than mine, because I have to say I am one of those people. I do not respect everybody's opinion. The more, like, just because you have a microphone, I don't always respect your opinion. This guy who's talking, I don't respect his opinion. Andrew, we talked. I'm not married. I don't have children. If I'm giving you advice on either, it's totally fine for you to say, what are you basing this on? Where did you get that information from? And I'm not going to be offended by you asking me that, because even if I might be right, you don't have to respect my opinion. I don't respect everybody's opinion on politics. You might be right on occasion. I don't respect your opinion. So I just think in this environment of these viral clips. I'm curious y'all take on all of this because I don't want to make it just about Marc.
Yeah.
But Marc is there because people turn their back on him. Marc should not be on this podcast. He gets the opportunity to talk to people, but Marc should still be at CNN, if you ask my opinion. Marc should have had a contract. As soon as CNN said, we're letting you go, somebody should have snatched Marc up and said that. And I just think they put dumb people on TV sometimes just because you have more likes and followers, and they don't celebrate our intellectualism. So I leave it there. We'd love to hear y'all's thoughts.
That's right. Well, one, I hope we never get to a place of self-censoring. I think it's important for us to bring our full beliefs, our full selves to this podcast, because that's what our listeners, the people who ride with us, expect, is that we'll be as direct as we can. And I will be very honest. I've never listened to the Budden by the Joe Budden podcast before. This was the first clip I've ever seen of it is with Marc on it. And that probably distances me even greater from a lot of folks out there who probably, it's the number 5 or top 10 for a reason. That means people are going there to subscribe. The reason why I think I value a voice like Marc's being able to cut through in a top 10, top 5 audience is that at least somebody gets an exposure to his perspective that may not have otherwise had it. But exactly what they're getting exposed to also matters. I don't know if that's the rhythm of it from day to day or whatever is broadcast week to week, whenever it shows. But I've got to believe that, knowing Marc well enough, that on a regular basis, he's probably being able to enter into that conversation, that discussion, a higher level of discourse than what we saw exhibited there. Maybe he's entering into that conversation some terms, some theory of changes, some beliefs that then people go and Google afterwards. They didn't know before, and now their curiosity has been piqued, and they're going to check it out. And to that extent, I think that is a good thing. I think it is probably not a good thing in society when sort of our thoughtful folks are only talking to other thoughtful folks. I think that's probably not the setup that we want. However, I know for sure I don't want to watch that fight every day. I don't want to watch that kind of discourse every day. I don't know that I want to see it any day, to be frank with you. Tiffany, what you brought up around some of the literacy rates, what the damage that AI is doing to quote unquote simplify somebody's life, but what is it? Whose life is it dumbing down in the process? That bothers me to a great extent. My kids know when they walk in the door after they get their snack, the first thing they're doing for the first 30 minutes at home is reading a book. There better be books are. I shouldn't hear your voice. The book isn't talking out loud. Whatever and we're conscious about that. We're conscious. My kids hate it, but when they do birthday cards, they write the birthday card. One, I'm sick of paying $3, $4, $5 for a kid's birthday card. That's crazy to me. But more importantly, the art of writing, of just articulating a sentiment. When my son Jackson wrote his first birthday card and it ended up being a paragraph long, I was over the moon because I was impressed by the sentiment he was expressing. I don't want our kids to lose that. And I think it's really incumbent upon the parents to weigh down on them to make sure that we're curating some of that experience for them. I know these sound like two separate kinds of conversations, but it really isn't, because if you teach your child to come to expect a certain thing, to exchange at a certain level of discourse, then that's what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. But if you put no expectation out there and the world starts to shape that for them, then that's some of what I think you get.
I heard Tiff at the outset say that she thought that Marc handled himself well in the exchange. And I can't tell you all how much I cringe looking at that exchange. I have been in conversation, in relationship with people that take you completely off of your square and who you are, who you have evolved out of. And I think for me, what's frustrating, and this is something that I would tell our friend as well, is I never want anybody to take any of us off of our square, but particularly not him. He just has so much to the world. Now, so much to add to the world. Now, I'll say I'm the first to call myself sophistiratchet. all day long. All day long. I believe in, both sides. Like depending on the mood, if I'm feeling froggy, I might leap. But what I don't like is I know firsthand that the founder of Uncle Bobby's, that's striving to ensure that Black folks can read in a neighborhood that he loves in Philly, the same person that's creating Black jobs and providing opportunity for our folks, doesn't want to show up that way for himself, for his family, for his kids, for anybody. And so what I really want to ask us to consider is, how do we resolve conflict when things are heated without name calling, without attacking someone's intellect or lack thereof? I think that we can lovingly challenge people to rise up without calling them dumb or anti-intellectual. Sure, that is where we are, but is there another way to call people in? I don't think that Marc should be left holding the bag in this exchange. I take great issue with that podcast and its treatment of Marc, and I was wondering when he was gonna snap. There's another clip that I don't know if you all saw, where Marc announces very vulnerably that he's lost almost all of his colleagues that were reporting in Gaza. And by lost, I mean they are killed. They died in their reporting and trying to be courageous for their people.
And then around the world, we're seeing violence everywhere, including Gaza, where I work for Al Jazeera. My colleagues, every colleague I have in Gaza has been murdered. Every single colleague I have in Gaza has been murdered. So we got a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff to pay attention to.
That's pretty good.
All right, Young Thug dissed, I get scared every time he do that shit.
He doing so fast. So you gotta
everybody know in Gaza is like,
oh my colleague.
God damn, he doing it again. That nigga Marc, boy. Why you don't never support him when he start talking that shit? You support him very well, Pizza.
He has my full support, but I also know that once he says something like that, or we discuss something like that, then we're just like, okay, what's the fucking pivot? What's the pivot after we talk about every journalist on the Gaza Strip being murdered? Like, what's the pivot?
So Young Thug
there we go.
appeared on Little Baby's project.
Quite the project.
And sharing vulnerably, he's lost all his people. And Joe Budden's transition, not this other guy, I don't know everybody's name, but not this other guy. Joe Budden's transition is like, and Young Thug. Like, just no mention of like, are you okay? Yeah. How do you feel? Who was lost this week? How did they die? Just like nothing. So 2 tips point around curiosity. If you can't find curiosity, find sympathy. If you can't find sympathy, find empathy. If you can't find empathy, find compassion. Because if you don't, the person who is in a constant state of grief, at some point that grief turns to rage because there's not a safe container for it. So we say on this show, welcome home, and we mean that. Of course, Marc is welcome anytime. I don't know about the rest of them. But I will just say, I don't think that means that we should be foreclosed to having discussions that are tough or where we don't think people are our peers or we're on the same level. I'm not into that. But where I see folks who are constantly unwilling to have conversations that stretch or to have conversations where they at least can appreciate a different perspective, I don't know that I'm into that. So I just want Marc to know I'm praying for you, brother. You know that. And I want better for him. I think that he deserves to hold space with people who are at least more compassionate and more eager to learn from his perspective. And clearly, you could take a Negro out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the Negro. So you might not want to keep leaping at Marc. He might just snap and bust your ass next time. I don't know. I don't want him to do that. But I mean, it was getting Real Housewives to me.
So I think this is a multifaceted discussion that I'm glad to be having in this space with you all. Because I think I agree on many points, and then I disagree with some that I'll kind of get to. But I think the reason this conversation is important with Tiffany is because we live in a culture of anti-intellectualism, and we have to understand that, and most of that is intentional. In this country right now, we literally punish kids because of the zip code they're born into. And what I mean by that, and I think Andrew may recall this from his time as being mayor, is that the way we fund our schools right now is from federal funding, state funding, and local funding. And so if you're from a poor area like where I'm from, I was in a catch-22 when I was legislating because I couldn't recruit industry because I had poor schools, but I had poor schools because I couldn't recruit industry. And so it becomes very cyclical about the resources. And I mean, to Tiff's greater point, we're not preparing young people for a 21st century global economy. And we're not giving them access. And right now, the proverbial world is flat because when you graduate from Denmark, South Carolina, where I'm from, or Tallahassee or Seattle, or wherever you may be from, you're now competing with kids who finish all around the world. And it contributes to this culture of anti-intellectualism. I think Marc's purpose there, and I love Marc Lamont Hill. We disagree on a lot of things substantively. We hit each other up, policy. We try to have these intellectual discussions back and forth. He's somebody who sharpens you, but I think Marc is there intentionally. I think Marc is there purposefully. I think that it adds to the dynamic. And going back to our conversations that we've had in the past, you cannot let things go in a vacuum without them being challenged. And so I do think that there is an added value to having someone like Marc Lamont Hill being there. You know, I watch the show every now and then, Andrew. I can't consume everything all the time, but I do watch it every now and then. And, you know, I know, I think his name is Flip. I guarantee you, I know 10 Flips. I know one Marc Lamont Hill, because that's just the level of intellect. But I know 10 Flips at minimum. And I think the way they were able to have that conversation, as cringe as it is, are conversations that happen more often than people actually think, or they're conversations that people want to have. I'm not in a position to give Marc Lamont Hill any advice, but what I would tell him if I talked to him the day or tomorrow, and I might hit him up on text, is what my daddy told me, which is that you never argue with a fool because people watching can't tell the difference. Right. And so, you know, in the South Carolina, we say you roll around with pigs, you both get muddy and the pig likes it. Right. And so there's this certain level of kind of checks and balances that goes through your head. But I love the layered dynamic that is Marc Lamont Hill from Philadelphia. I think Andrew has the same thing in him. Like, there is a certain level of respect that you must have, which is also why I'm pushing back on one of your points, Tiffany. There is a certain level of respect you must have going into these conversations, right? And it's a respect. We will never have that because we all have that level of respect for each other. And what you saw in that episode was that respect being fractured. And whenever that respect is fractured, you have to be willing to bust someone's ass, right? And you, I mean, not literally, but you got to show that you are.
Or literally,
because I mean, T.I. is somebody who talks about it oftentimes, Clifford Ayers. You never get that back. You never get that back, right? And so I loved how layered the discussion was. It was very real. It was cringeworthy to watch, all those things, but it was very, very real. And I think that I took something out of that where I think that people were extremely proud Marc Lamont Hill stood up for himself in that moment. I think that I respect Flip's opinions, although they aren't maybe to the level of likening of intellectual capacity or whatever. But there's so many people that have it that I'm not ready to cast him aside. I want him to have more conversations with Marc Lamont Hill. I want him to approach these conversations with respect. I want Marc to approach those conversations with Flip with respect. I think we have to do that. When we're going on college campuses or going out in the world, I mean, you have to have this level of respect because that is the only way information will free flow. The last thing that I'll say is something that you and Andrew said, which made me kind of jump a little bit, is it's about AI and the way that we approach it, right? And I think, and I know that we probably will get to the same place, but the way that it was couched, it scares me a little bit. And the reason it scares me is because many times Black folk end up in diametrical opposition from the next thing. And what I don't want to do is ever frame us because it will leave us behind. I want us to be a part of this new revolution. I want us to find our footing in artificial intelligence. I want us to be able to accept it in our communities. I want us to be able to monetize it in our communities. I want us to be able to use it in our communities. Will it contribute to the culture of anti-intellectualism? Probably. But do we want it to contribute to the culture of anti-intellectualism and to leave us behind in terms of being a part of this ship that we know is coming? Or do we take this posture of being anti-intellectual? I mean, we take this posture of being anti-AI to a point where, again, we're talking about, man, if 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, we would have been on the front lines of XYZ, it's different. This is not an indictment on Andrew talking about the way that he integrates books with his children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to be clear about that because I try to do the same thing. I want my kids to be well read. I'm actually going to steal that thing about writing birthday cards, not because I'm as cheap as Andrew, but because I think it's just a good parenting idea. But I do want us to kind of posture ourselves with this new innovation is not just looking at the detriment, but also looking at the plus. Mind you, I'm not someone who knows all the pluses, but I'm willing to try.
I hear you, Andrew. I mean, Bakari. Look, I'm doing it.
I'm about to go Marc Lamont Hill. I'm about to go Marc Lamont Hill in this motherfucker. That's what I'm about to do.
But I
don't want no smoke.
But here's the thing. The thing, Tiff. He ain't coming because guess what? He's behind the screen. He feeling real bold behind that screen. Can't do that over there.
I hear you on the AI point. And just in transparency, I did reach out to Marc and invite him on our show, and he enthusiastically accepted. So look for Marc to join the podcast in the coming weeks, and I can't wait to have him here to invite him. And I'm so happy, Angela, you referenced that other clip, because that was the other clip that I was so offended by. But to your point, Bakari, one about AI, it's not, I don't think the answer to, will this contribute to anti-intellectualism? Probably. The answer is absolutely. Like, we have the data right now that shows that. But I do take your point, and I'm in this debate with almost everybody I talk to about, and as Angela knows, I don't like to debate, but I'm in this debate because people are trying to convince me to like AI. And I'm like, I'm not, I know it's necessary, it's here, but I'm not going to be one of these people that's like, I'm so excited about AI. I do think, just like social media, it dulls intellect. And I think we grew up without social media. We grew up without AI. And so our brains are wired differently, where we can utilize these tools and still maintain some level of cognitive function. Young people do not have that privilege. I also will say, this is an area where we likely disagree. The cheese may stand alone on this one too. I'm not saying it's something wrong with engaging the flips of the world. I would never say, Andrew, Bakari, Angela, y'all should not engage the flips. I'm saying I, Tiffany, have no desire to engage the flips of the world. I don't choose to be in a conversation, but that's just not my ministry. I wouldn't be good at it. And I just have no desire. And yes, I do not respect everybody's opinion on everything. And yes, we respect each other's opinion here on most things, but there are some things. I mean, Bakari, if you came to me and was like, your period coming, you got a cramp, this is what you need to do. I'm probably like, what are you basing that on, Bakari? Like, where did you get that from? Like, that's not necessarily your area of expertise. I
got that off Instagram. The lady on Instagram said if you eat steak when your period starts. I'm just telling you what the lady on Instagram told me.
Listen, depending on how bad the cramps are, I might listen to his ass. So I'm sorry, that's where we differ.
You're desperate. But I hear that so often, and people are like, I got a hunch. Or I got it off Instagram, or I saw it on TikTok, or I know for a fact. Well, how do you know for a fact? And then more often people told me, because so-and-so told me, then you don't know for a fact. If you didn't talk to the source, then you don't know something for a fact. So I don't respect everyone's opinion.
How we might feel about you in sports and your analysis there.
How dare you?
I get it.
First of all, how dare you? I am happy to be the sports expert, but there are some things that y'all shouldn't respect my opinion on. And I think that's totally fine.
Let me say what my fear is when I go into conversations about respect. And also let me just say this, Tiffany, and people that are listening, protect your peace, right? You are the only one that knows how to make sure that you are as healthy mentally and emotionally to go forward.
Amen.
And I don't want you decompensating over doing some other bullshit that otherwise you wouldn't do. However, my only point in saying that we have to approach these conversations in respect, and I'm glad that Marc is having these conversations, is that particularly with Black folk and Black intelligentsia, the gulf between Black intelligentsia and those people who are intellectually curious is widening. A lot to do with societal and policy factors, but also whether or not we want to hear this or not, we're pushing them away. And so I think we have to be very cognizant, and I'm not speaking French, I mean global we. I mean, we have to be very cognizant that sometimes you want to say, man, I just want to have a conversation with Andrew Gillum and Marc Lamont Hill. You know, those are the people I want to talk to, because those are the people that get me. And we can talk about politics with some depth. And then when somebody asks you a question and they come to you and they like, man, so again, you know, Stephen A was talking about this and Jasmine Crockett on appropriations. And then you don't want to go there with them because of their intellectual curiosity and you push them away. Then they begin to seek out other sources. And so I'm trying to figure out how we fill that vacuum. And that's why, you know, if Marc I'll pay for some boxing lessons if that's what it takes for him to go and be successful on the Joe Budden podcast.
You know what I wish we had started with, and I know we're wrapping this topic up. I wish we would have started with what we think we heard in the exchange. You know, just a little interpretation of what the fight was about. Because I actually didn't. What I will say is, I didn't think that there were fancy words dividing what each of them understood the other to be saying. It wasn't a vocabulary contest. It was somebody saying, you always using words that feel bigger than what this conversation really ought to be about to impress somebody and to cuddle up to this audience and to make, you know, people feel better about this part or that part. And he said, nah, I didn't do that. You think they're big words because you don't always understand them. And dude's like, nah, I don't. You just always, you know, you're always doing too much, whatever. We can go on and all that. But there were not big divides in understanding what the other was saying. I feel like I followed what the beef may have been or may not have been about. And that's why this whole idea that some condescension and the way in which we talk about these things has to take place in order for us to be on the same plane of debate is a little weird to me. I think a lot of times it may make us feel good to say we got to use a different vocabulary in order for all of us to be on the same page. But at a very narrow level, I don't think the vocabulary is the problem at all. I'm picking up exactly what you're putting down. I'm picking it all up. I'm telling you, this is the part about it where you're not going to come at me that way. And you're still coming. But you know, you're not going to come at me that way. And you're still coming. And so what has to happen is it's not like we're refusing to have the conversation. The conversation is being had. It's absolutely being had. Now, whether or not you're properly interpreting, you know, my this versus your that, is something completely different. I resent the idea that you have to speak. Why can't we call up instead of acting down or calling down? What is the matter? We're calling up into a conversation.
What's that mean? What's that look like?
For me, it simply is, we don't have to use cuss words the whole way through in order for us to feel like we're having a very gutter, you know, conversation that everybody can reach into.
But what that shit mean though?
Precisely what you just said, what you just exampled. It's just one way at it. That I think sometimes this whole idea of meeting people at their level and this sort of thing is an insult to the people for whom you think you're meeting.
I agree.
That sometimes that meeting can take place at a very common place, at a very decent and respectable place, without us going outside ourselves.
You know, can I bring up one point though?
No, Bakari.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm over here I'm working, y'all, and I'm doing the best I can with the Wi-Fi God gave me.
I feel mansplained. I'm just saying, he really does have a delay. It's getting on our nerves. But I will just say this too. I think it is really important for us to understand that sometimes this is about inadequacy. And I think that if anybody should understand what it's like to feel voiceless or silenced, what it is like to feel unheard, or invisible, unseen, I think it should be Black folks. And that's why I'm like, I don't know how we got to a place where our conversations are so siloed. You know, the construct of the neighborhood doesn't look the same anymore. There's gentrification. The kids, you know, some kids are going to private school and their parents can afford to send them there, but they still trying to find them communal activities. Some of our folks, but there are so many more who don't feel comfortable sending Black kids with other Black children. And so they are siloed. And I do think we have an obligation, for unity's sake, just for math. Like, there ain't enough of us for all of these additional divides. This man on this show, though, hadn't, I don't feel, come to terms with the fact that he is on the other side of disrespect too often with Marc. And so what Marc was focused on, someone who is smart, and we know in our community, sometimes when you're smart, you are bullied. Like all of your life, like you are bullied. If you're the one that's seen reading books and you don't play at recess sometimes because you want to do your homework or whatever, I'm not saying that's Marc's story, but sometimes it is. And you still nigga, you get mad every now and then are like, let me tell you what, you shouldn't get confused. And I think that's the part, what he was focusing on, Andrew, since you were talking about the why, I heard Marc almost zone in on the sucker shit remark. And he was like, you ain't gonna call me sucker too many more times. And it's because he's constantly having that experience on the podcast, which is why that's my concern for his mental health. Now, Marc is mature and older and had an angry outburst, but also checked himself. Was like, wait a minute, let's all calm down to try to reel it back in. But there are a lot of kids who don't have the tools to emotionally do that at school. And they're the ones who end up taking the gun to school. They're the ones who...
I agree with you 100% on this all really being about a conversation of inadequacy. And the truth is that it was inadequacy on both sides.
Thank you. Can I chime in on that? Because
yes, go right ahead.
Because I was going to say one of the things we have not brought to the forefront is the fact that y'all do realize Marc called this nigga dumb.
He did.
I did not hear that.
How did you?
When he said, "I'm using words that are tricky to you." It's dumb.
Yeah,
but the person on the receiving end understood.
He responded. Do say you're using them tricky words, and he said, "I'm not using." No, not come on.
That is a way to call him dumb.
No, I disagree, and this is why I don't have conversations with people like that, because to me that was disrespectful. People like him. Because Marc made him feel small.
I don't think there was confusion
because his
on either
ego
side.
is so fragile. Because when we disagree, Marc made him feel small, and when he said you use those tricky words, and Marc said I don't use tricky words. I'm using words that are tricky to you. I actually agree with that. I don't have to again. If my ministry, I applaud anybody who goes into spaces and says, yes, you are the person I'm seeking out. The flips of the world are the people I want to engage. I applaud it. I don't look down on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying I know because I'm going to respond how Marc did. Don't try to belittle me because I'm using the word you don't understand. Don't try to give a put down to me because I'm talking about something that might be a bit over your head. So I did not hear Marc call him dumb. I heard Marc saying, no, don't try to say something to me because I'm using a word you don't understand. Use your curiosity and say, Marc, can you better explain your point? You all talk about things all the time. Angela and I had breakfast in New York with our boy Alfonso. They're both attorneys. And so they were saying things that I didn't follow. I didn't understand. And Angela was saying stuff like, well, I'd have to pro hoc in and because discovery. I didn't get that. I wasn't sitting there like, y'all all using them tricky words like I'm here too. I'm like, what does that mean exactly? Was I not?
But Tiff, you're wired different. You're wired different. And I think what the three of us, I don't want to speak for the boys. I'll let them do it themselves. But the three of us may have heard an implication of dumb. If somebody said back to me, that's still dumb. Like whether he said it directly or it was implied. If somebody said back to me, I'm like, I don't know what y'all talking about. And they'd be like, well, you don't know because you slow. That's not calling me dumb.
But Marc didn't say that.
I know, but I'm trying to give you an analogy, no debater. You know she's not debating y'all.
I wanted to, at some point, we're going to tell that conversation because I think more people probably agree with Angela when we talk about it. But anyway.
Well, I do want to say this. Go ahead, Bakari, because we'll be really done if we didn't get to reparations after this.
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes.
No, because I'm going to let y'all have this reparation conversation on the West Coast. We don't know what those are in South Carolina. But when I said the conversation,
apparently.
when I said the conversation was layered, I saw two people get heated in a conversation. I saw, they're going back and forth about something you're doing. I saw Marc call him dumb. I saw the guy respond as if somebody just called him dumb. I saw a conversation get out of hand. But the thing that you got to point out that Angela hit on was something that our brother Marc Lamont Hill should get credit for, which is that he had the emotional intelligence to see a conversation get out of hand near the end of that clip and said, let me sit down, let me back away. And Angela highlighted something that I do not want to go unnoticed. And I'm not going to be over here, trying to be a black man whisperer all the time. But when the point comes up, I will say this, that there are a lot of our young boys who do not and cannot, because they don't have the tools, display the level of emotional intelligence that Marc got. and Mark showed. And sometimes they're going to have these discussions and debates at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And instead of being expelled from school, which becomes cyclical, and kicked out of school, if they're able to say, wait a minute, let me cool down, let cooler heads prevail. I think that is also a lesson that we can take from Marc Lamont Hill, even if he didn't want to be in that space, because sometimes people get us out of character, and sometimes Black folk got to get out of character. And so, I think being able to pull yourself back in sometimes and breathe, I give Mark full props for that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of pulling, the governor of California does not think that we should have reparations. And I think this is a continuation of a Booker T. Washington concept of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. We don't have no boots, friend. So somehow that got a little confused. We are going to talk now about him vetoing some measures. And if you can't tell, I am trying to pull what those measures are exactly.
Well,
there was one
I can say if you can't find it, Angela.
No, I got it. There was one that I want to point out too. Interestingly, as there is this onslaught of attacks on higher education, one of the bills was a post-secondary education admissions preference, which would have been for descendants of the enslaved. What I think is fascinating here is this is Assembly Bill 7, who was introduced. It was introduced by Isaac Bryan. What's fascinating about this is there's this attack, this violent attack almost on universities all over the country. They think that this bill would have violated Proposition 209. That's what I talked about at the top of this show. Then there's the California Dream for All People. This would have also benefited descendants of enslaved people. That also was vetoed. That was AB 57, Assembly Bill 57. Assembly Bill 62 would have had the Civil Rights Department deal with racially motivated eminent domain, which we know is a big issue in California, but also all over this country. Issues like heirs property as well have come up. And of course, folks losing property for property tax debt has been a major issue. That also was vetoed. Then there was Assembly Bill 742, where for the Department of Consumer Affairs, the licensing would be preferential for anyone who was a descendant of an enslaved person. And lastly, Assembly Bill 766. This would have provided strategic plans for diversity, equity, and inclusion for state agencies and departments. Gavin Newsom saw it fit to veto not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 bills that would have provided some benefit to enslaved people of descendants of people who were enslaved. And I think what is mind-blowing about this is what he agreed to was a study. We know over and over again that folks are put into position to review. And maybe it's because this textbook thing, that people have been banning textbooks long before they were off the shelves. They wouldn't even look at them to deal with guilt. So now Gavin Newsom, who has found time to engage with white Republicans, especially those who support and lift up white racist ideology, saw fit to veto 5 bills that would have provided some type of restorative or reparative justice for folks who are descendants of enslaved people.
So I'll
It's
just
the best
add
coast.
a little bit of clarity, and then I don't have to weigh in on it. But the bill that he did sign was authorizing $6 million for California State University to study how to confirm an individual's status as a descendant of an enslaved person. And for context, if you've been following the reparations issue in California a few years ago, the state legislature did approve a similar bill, reparations bill, which also caused a lot of controversy because, one, people began to question the history of slavery and how many people were enslaved in California. And of course, there were enslaved people in California, and California certainly benefit from the institution of slavery, as did every state in America. Two, it became quite a debate because there was controversy over if you were a descendant of an enslaved person here in America. And so the head of the Black Caucus at the time, who had authored this bill, was out and about trying to defend that they were saying, yes, you have to be a descendant of an enslaved person here in America. So when you think about people, maybe, your parents migrated from the Caribbean, which also benefit from the slave trade. They were saying, if your mama it happens to be Jamaican, or your grandma was Jamaican, then you do not qualify for these bills. So the reparations issue in California has been a huge deal. This also isn't unlike what we've seen in Congress. Angela could probably say more about this on what Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, I think I have this right, I'm pulling from memory. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was also a big advocate on just a study. And if I am correct, that study was also never, Congress kept saying, no, we won't even approve a bill to study what reparations would look like. And there have been similar measures all across the country, even including in Maryland, our friend of the show, Governor Wes Moore, who also vetoed a reparations bill. So that's the context. And I'm not sure that we'll ever see reparations in this country at the state or federal level, to be honest.
I think that the other thing that's important here is he did approve 4 measures. All of them had to do with how you file or receive a civil rights complaint, how dollars are being spent in post-secondary education. There have been 4 bills that he approved since August. All of them have to do with study or the ways in which civil rights complaints are decided. And sadly, and maybe this was on purpose, I'm willing to say at this point, the way this guy moves, it could be on purpose. He knows that there are federal dollars that would have to help to determine whether or not the Department of Education, for example, in California, can even go through and have the actual funding necessary to address said claims. The other thing that we have to just be clear about is some of the state funding that would go to CSU, which is where one of the bills also would impact California State University, also federal dollars. So the moment they do something that is in the crosshairs of the federal government, they will likely lose federal funding. We've already seen that happen. So the bills that he approved, I think all of them are contingent in some way at least, or at least could put them in the crosshairs of losing federal funding.
How do you compare his veto to that of Governor Wes Moore? Because they both essentially did the same. Anybody.
Yeah, Wes Moore was a study. He said that they had done enough studies. I tend to agree. I just would have liked to see him establish an implementation task force to move beyond the study part. But yeah, these are not studies. These were implementation bills that he vetoed. He approved a study. Yeah.
I mean, I love Wes. And so I've actually given Wes this criticism to his face. And spoke to him about it. The first thing Wes should have done, I believe, in my opinion, is if you're going to veto a study, you couple that veto with a package full of equity proposals to move the state forward. That's whoever gave him advice to veto that, because then he ended up doing something which I'm going to show the similarities between what Wes did and Governor Newsom did. Governor Newsom and Wes both tried to triangulate, which is something Bill Clinton made extremely popular. It's kind of going against your base, rising above, having this belief that you're able to kind of rise above the fray on issues that are contentious, such as this, with some thought that is maybe beyond both Democrat and Republican thought processes, right? It's like a triangulation strategy. And many times when that happens, poor folk, brown folk, black folk are left behind. The second thing that Governor Newsom's having to deal with now is he's having to explain himself. And I think that Andrew can tell you the basic tenets of politics. If you're explaining, you're losing. So now he has to go out on the road and tell people why he did this and tell me, what have you done for this person or what have you done for that person? In Wes's case, when you talk to him about it, he said, let me tell you what we've done for black people. And then he began to explain and have to rattle off and do all of those things. And if you're ever in a position where you have to do that, you're losing. I mean, there's a larger conversation about whether or not you will get reparations. I believe all 4 of us are for reparations of some shape, form, or fashion. The question is, what do they look like, right? And how do we get there? But I think Gavin Newsom just displayed to you that he is, I don't think it's a knock, but he's very calculating. And in this calculation that he made, the people that lose are people that look like us.
Yeah. I was just going to appreciate that helping us to recall triangulation. And it is a strategy that sits at the foot of Bill Clinton. He did it on welfare reform, where he made black women the ire of everybody's existence.
Correct.
It happened on Crime and Justice and the hiring of 100,000 new police officers to hit American
Correct.
streets. And we know what the foil of that was. And I think what's happening now is certain Democrats are deciding that it is an imperative in the Democratic presidential primary, meaning it is a must-have in the primary, to have a Democrat who is willing to strike hard against the Democratic base in some form or another in order to win this movable middle of the electorate out there who will be kinder to them, who may give them their votes if they can show that they have the courage to strike out against a part of its base. And similar as it was in the early 1990s, 92 and 94 and 96, Black people are going to be at the intersection of this striking out. Reparations is, I think, just one form that we're going to see this triangulation take place. I think it's going to happen, quite frankly, on a number of our issues. And what they're going to try to communicate to voters is that, yes, I believe in the Democratic coalition, but I'm willing to tell them hard truths too. I'm willing to go and look them directly in the face and tell them what's good for them and what's not good for them and what's bad for their people, and that I'm not always going to be on their side, but I want all their votes. And I think we have to be really suspicious of this tactic. I think we have to call the tactic out when we see it. I don't think it's worth waiting. I don't think we got to wait our way through the presidential primary process to know that this is a key part, or some folks are making this a key part of their strategy for winning the Democratic nomination. Whether Gavin Newsom believes this thing or not is of little concern to me. Whether the governor of Maryland believed what he was pitching at the time is of little concern for me. I think the calculation has been made that you have to show that you're willing to, on the Democratic side, by the way, I'm not even saying this for the Republicans because I don't believe this is a strategy on their side. But on the Democratic side, you have to be willing to strike out against a key element of your base, i.e. Black people, in order to show that you have the bona fides to compete and to win the presidency in the 28 cycle. And I just think when we see this thing rear its head, we have to call it for what it is. We have to make a demand and then see if they're willing to then recapitulate back to our demand. And so far, somebody has determined that it's a winning strategy to take on reparations and to sideline this issue for Black folks and be willing to do it in our face. And we got to be watchful of it.
One of the things in your litany of things about Bill Clinton that I thought you were going to go to that I want the viewers to remember, some of them are old enough to remember. If you not, Google it. Sister Soldier was another moment that was quite similar to that as well.
She was a foil, absolutely.
That goes in that litany. But also...
huge foil.
And also, listen, I love Wes. I hope he runs for president of the United States. But if we cannot be critical of people who look like us doing the same thing, I can't hold Gavin Newsom accountable. I already have enough reasons to dislike Gavin Newsom because he is the most handsome person and the smartest person in the room. Always, all you have to do is ask him, right? But I do think that lack of self-awareness shines through in the politics of the day. He employs the hug a Black woman thing, which I hate, which is like every time he goes to a place, he finds an old Black woman and he hugs her for the camera. And that's like the front page of the Florence newspaper or whatever. So there are a lot of nuances I dislike. But the triangulation that we're seeing, and it put me in that mind frame. It's like whenever you go through a period of triangulation with your elected officials, I mean, Barack Obama did some of it too when he was running for office. It wasn't to that extent. Black folk, poor people are in the crosshairs in that order.
One and the same in many instances.
Okay. Well, all right. Tiff, you feel complete? Oh, Bakari's internet finally went out.
Because I'm excited to get to calls to action because I have a good call to action this week.
Very good. Well, let's start with you with calls to action.
Okay, my call to action this week, I'm thrilled, is for a friend and someone I really look up to, and that's Dr. Sharon Malone. She is a doctor, gynecologist, and she just launched the podcast this week called The Second Opinion. She is a part of the Michelle Obama crew. She's one of Michelle Obama's best friends. So you may have seen her on Mrs. Obama's podcast, or you may have seen her on Oprah. But I'm thrilled because I had her on my show and I had the show at MSNBC. And how that happened, I was literally literally walking in City Center. You guys are familiar with City Center. And she came up to me and she was like, you're in perimenopause. And I'm like, oh, hello, Dr. Sharon Malone. How are you? And I've been thrilled to be able to text her all of my questions. And for women, our audience, if you're in your 30s and up, each decade our body goes through changes as we age. And so I've been able to text her all of my questions, everything I'm going through. Angela and I go to Kim Blackwell's conference, and she always hosts a session there where it's literally just grown women speak, which is what her book is called. And so I'm thrilled that she's launching this podcast. So now all of you can listen to her. And hopefully, I don't know what the profile will be, but she'll take fewer questions, I hope. But I've asked her more than one personal question. So please check out the Second Opinion podcast. I think it will be just on YouTube. And I know I plan on being a guest on there. And I don't know if you boys will, but maybe Angela or somebody. It'd probably mostly be women, I imagine, guests on the show. So that's my call to action. Check out Dr. Malone. Oh, she's also the wife of former Attorney General Eric Holder. Speaking of voting rights.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Andrew?
Yeah, I want to take this listener question as part of my day. Can we get to your question?
Native land. So grateful for y'all. Especially happy to see Tiffany Cross land in a good place. I used to follow her on MSNBC, as well as Joy Reid. I no longer watch MSNBC since they ditched so many journalists of color. Katie Fang, Mehdi Hassan. But that's not my question. My question concerns the No Kings protests, past and present. I am part of the 92%. My mother was an activist in the civil rights era. So resistance is in my DNA. And I wonder, as far as the No Kings protests, should we be involved? Should we be doing more as a community? Should we be doing more, and what that more might look like? And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. Thanks.
I welcome quick feedback from each of you, but I'll just say from my 2 cents, we don't have to make it too terribly complicated. The enemy has made himself very, very clear on the other side here. And I just think we have to be, whatever your mental, personal health capacity can bear, can stand, we have to cover the zone. We have to be everywhere, anywhere, all the time, when possible, to push back and defend for ourselves. They've thrown the roadmap out. They're flooding the zone, and they want to keep us dizzy, so dizzy that we stay unengaged and uninvolved. And I just think if you find something that speaks to you, and that your heart, mind, and spirit is okay to give, that you give of your time, your energy, your effort, to fight back against this current formation of the enemy. I don't know if you all have deep thoughts on to king or not to no king.
Nope, we're going to keep going.
For the love. That's all I want to say.
Yes, we're going to keep going with calls to action. Bakari?
Yeah, I mean, my call to action is around D'Angelo, and to Black men in particular who listen to the show. There are a lot of us. Make sure you're getting your checkups. Go to the doctor. Listen to your body. Listen to your wife, your girlfriend. They're with you every day. They know when things aren't going right. If you still ain't getting your morning wood in the morning or something like that, make sure that your heart is pumping the way it should, and make sure your blood is flowing the way it should, and go see the doctor. Don't wait until you're in the emergency room. And I tried to go and get my and do a colonoscopy and all those other things, and they told me I was too young, and so I was like, I'll pay out of pocket. Let me just get, I want the whole workup, head from the rooter to the tutor, as we say in South Carolina. But I encourage everybody to go out there and listen to your body, get checked up. To Black men, all of us for that matter, know another young Black man who died too early. D'Angelo's another example of that. Again, rest in peace, condolences to his family.
Thank you so much, Bakari. Mine is simple. I want you all to pay attention to what's happening this 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. We are hanging on by a thread. Andrew and I interviewed with Janae Nelson right on the other side of her oral arguments at the Supreme Court. And I also want you all to really go back and listen to those oral arguments. Clarence Thomas basically indicates that he desires for Section 2 to also be gutted out of the Voting Rights Act. So please go back and listen to what Clarence says versus Ketanji, because there is a difference. And on that helpful note, I would encourage you all to remember that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. With that, we'll holler at y'all next time. Welcome home, y'all. As always, we want to remind everyone to leave us a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. If you're looking for more shows like ours, check out the other shows on our Reason Choice Media Network, Politics with Jamel Hill, Off the Cup with S.E. Cup, and our newest edition, Now You Know, with Noah DeBarrasso. Be sure to give those a follow, and don't forget to follow us too on social media and subscribe to our text or email list on nativelandpod.com. Y'all, we also have Substack now, so check us out there. Make sure you subscribe. We are Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, Andrew Gillum, and Bakari Sellers. Welcome home, y'all. There are 383 days until midterm elections.
Welcome home to the native, landing on a podcast space destined for greatness. 60 minutes or so hit, not too long for the grave shift. High level combo, politics in a way that you can taste it, then digest it. Politics touches you even if you don't touch it, so get invested. Cross the T's and dot the I's, Gillum back to get 'em, stand on business with Rye. You could have been anywhere, but you chose us. Native Land Podcast, the brand that you can trust. Yes.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.